Time to share the love, my friends, and switch away from Great Wall Motor vehicles and talk about some other brands. How about that? Today we're going to once again follow Ivan from Diary of a Viking channel in Russia, who is going to be interviewing another owner, real owner of an Omoda 5, or as it's known on the territory of Russia, Omoda C5 vehicle. This Omoda vehicle is obviously by Chery brand, and it has 80,000, rounded up a little bit, 80,000 kilometers on the clock. Very, very respectable distance traveled for this vehicle, and it's, as we find out, it's almost 2 years old, close to 2 years old. So without any further ado, we're just going to listen to what this lovely owner of this Omoda 5, Omoda C5, Alexei, is going to tell us about it. All the good, all the not so good, so please make yourselves comfortable as always. And we are jumping straight into this. This video is sponsored by the old friends of this channel, Ottocast. Ottocast are very well established on the market manufacturers of wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay AI boxes, which is basically a wireless adapter for your car. If your car is struggling with wireless connectivity to built-in wired Android Auto or wired Apple CarPlay, then Ottocast is one of the major biggest brands that are offering massive discounts to my community to check out. Check out the links in the description below. They have a lot of units. Lately I've reviewed like a couple of them, and this is also your chance to check the Auto Gear Reviews sister channel of mine, of Value Cars Australia, where I go in depth into unboxing, installation and other things about these units. Check them out. So why did he buy a Omoda C5? Did he have any other options? What other vehicles did he have before? So what are we comparing here to? And Alexei tells us that he generally makes rather spontaneous choices, even when it comes to purchasing cars, no matter how infrequent these purchases might be. But he kind of makes a decision pretty quickly, from what I understood. So he just went, he used to have a Skoda Rapid, or Rapid, Skoda Rapid. I don't think we have it in Australia, but you can look up on the web if you really are interested to see the specific technical characteristics, because throughout this interview, Alexei actually goes back and compares varieties. He shows us bits and pieces of this Omoda 5 and says, oh, but in my Skoda, this and that. So you may want to research it further if you really are serious about this comparison. All right. So he drove Skoda Rapid until it was well over 100,000 kilometers on the clock. And he was a fan, from what I can understand, of Skoda. He says straight away that Skoda drove better, generally drove better, had a softer suspension, was much better on the steering, and he remembers it really, really fondly. When he was picking this Omoda C5, he also compared it to Renault Arcana, and I think we do have actually, funnily enough, Renault Arcana being advertised in Australia. I don't know how popular it is on our market. The fraction of Renault cars sold here is probably minuscule, in all honesty. But he basically didn't like Arcana. It's not a review of Renault Arcana, but he said he went for a test drive. Now the steering was too soft for him. He couldn't really feel it when he drove it. So Omoda steering was apparently much, much better. He also liked the looks, and we discussed it in the past. I reviewed a lot of Omoda 5s, said a lot about the brand and about this particular model. It's polarizing. I think it's polarizing, and Alexei is a great example of someone who fell on the side of the barricades where people love the look of Omoda 5. Go figure. Let me know in the comments down below, unless you have already. Where do you fall? On this side or on that side? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you somewhere on the fence in the middle? So he liked the looks, even though he says, again, no comparison to the German-made cars, German-made quality. So he actually speaks from a perspective of someone who is more of a, yeah, I don't think he's a particular fan of Chinese cars, but I think he's a very utilitarian user. And what I mean by that is that he kind of came across in that interview, that's something like, I have to tell you postscript, he came across in the interview to me as someone who is dispassionate. He's rather dispassionate. He's not, so cars can be seen literally as vehicles that take you from, workhorses who take you from point A to point B, while for a lot of other people like myself, it's somewhere in between. It needs to do the job, it needs to move me and let me car camp and do whatever I want to do, but I want to have emotional connection to it. Alexei sort of speaks very emotionally about that Skoda Rapid that he lost, basically, but he's not that emotional about this Omoda 5. Very, very interesting. In case it matters to you, but that probably highlights some of his pieces of feedback that he's providing here. He also jokes here about the choice of a color of this particular Omoda C5. He says, I was picking the color so that it matches my iPhone. And apparently he says it's only half joke, because his Skoda Rapid that he had was red, and he said my previous iPhone that I had during the ownership of Skoda Rapid was also red. So there you go, quite funny. Of course, these are different class of the vehicles, so this is a crossover or small SUV, while the other one was a sedan, if I'm not mistaken. That's why different transmissions were. I think the Skoda had a classic kind of hydraulic automatic transmission, while this Omoda 5 with 1.5 turbo petrol engine has a CVT. It's not a DCT one. So this one with 1.5 CVT and not the 1.6 DCT GT Omoda 5, the one that we had here in Australia as well briefly before it got discontinued. So this one, in terms of the engine, in terms of performance, is somewhat similar to his old Skoda Rapid. And the Omoda apparently accelerates really well and performs really, really well at lower speeds. He says somewhere in the ballpark of anywhere between 60 to 80 kilometers an hour. Acceleration is fast, it's okay in city traffic. However, when you go onto the big road, when you go onto a highway, when you're at higher speeds, 120, 130 that they can reach there, he says that that's when you try to overtake, you feel the sluggishness. It definitely is nothing compared to his old Skoda. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. So how is this car used then? I already mentioned that he's using it for his personal business needs. He does. He's a self-employed small business owner who often drives out to service regional and rural mobile and cable TV nodes, internet nodes, whether they are privately owned and stationed at someone's country house or whether they're somewhere else. That's me reading between the lines over here, which is why he drives on a highway a lot more than in the city, by the sound of it, explaining how did he get to 80,000 kilometers in only 2 years. That's a lot of driving for one person. I know we have reviewed cars where people have done crazy amounts of kilometers, but there are probably multiple people driving those vehicles. Here, he is alone. And this car is definitely not something that he got for leisure. It is definitely his workhorse, same as his Skoda was before. What about fuel economy? Again, not a favorable comparison to Skoda Rapid when he continues comparing here, because apparently his Skoda averaged about 6 liters per 100 kilometers on a highway, mostly on a highway, and in similar conditions, this Omoda C5 is averaging about 8 liters, so not great. Other advice for potential buyers? Well, he goes straight away to commenting on the boot. He says, listen, if you need the boot, if you need bigger boot, that is not a car for you, flat out. Don't even fool yourself, type of stuff. And as you can see, he resorted to using a roof box to store his stuff. In all honesty, I know he makes decisions quickly and I know he likes the looks, but considering that he is such a utilitarian, kind of quick decision-making man who dispassionately chooses his car rather than pure emotional on a whim he decided to buy it, it's very, very strange for me that he highlights several times through the interview that he uses the car for work to transport his antennas and whatever else he makes a reference to in terms of his TV and internet equipment. And yet he chose Omoda C5 or Omoda 5, basically, as we know it here. It's strange. It's just a strange choice. It's a bad choice, I'm gonna say. I would dare say. But that's me. That's me talking. That's not a translation talking. He also briefly mentions that suspension is rather rigid. It's not an independent rear wheel suspension, so it's a bit bumpy. I noticed that too when I was test driving Omoda 5 here in Australia. How are the seats, especially the driver's position? Well, he says that main problem with them is not the seats themselves, not the bucket seat. It is the lack of telescopic adjustment, the in and out adjustment of the steering wheel. So apparently when you comfortably kind of lean back into this bucket seat, your arms feel too stretched out and you cannot pull the steering wheel a little bit out towards yourself. So he got used to it. Ivan even asks him, so man, like after all these 80,000 kilometers almost, did you get used to it? He says, yeah, I got used to it, but like he definitely doesn't sound happy about it. To me, once again, anything aftermarket, anything he installed, well, other than the obvious box, that storage box on the roof that we already mentioned, where he puts his equipment, he actually installed the sprinkler or the washer, or whatever you call it, for the rear view camera, because the rear view camera in those conditions, weather conditions, it obviously gets dirty, and he installed it, like bought from AliExpress or whatever, and installed it himself. and apparently it works rather well, so that was one thing that he installed. He also had some custom sound insulation done, which he doesn't elaborate on. I don't know if it's with Klubny Service or some other provider. They're in St. Petersburg, by the way, these guys, so probably some other provider, I'm guessing. But he says even the standard sound insulation is not terrible in Omoda because, for example, it has double glazing. Apparently music is also important for Alexei. He talked about installing some booster for the sound, whatever there. He doesn't elaborate very much on exactly what he did there, but after the sound insulation has been improved, his music experience has become also better in the car. Ivan asks him about any creaking, any other kind of defects, and he says, look, generally nothing major, but he says in the weather condition changes, in the temperature drops and rises, the frontal plastic panel above the main kind of infotainment and the main instruments could creak a little bit. So that apparently happens. Any incidents? Well, apparently yes. Alexei says, I had a minor incident, but then he shows a photo, overlays a photo on the screen, and to me it doesn't look like a minor incident. It looks medium to major, to be honest with you. Like, let me know, what do you think? The bonnet basically crumbled on one side, so apparently he was turning at a street light and some other guy kind of hit him, or he hit, I think, the rear wheel of Suzuki Grand Vitara or something like that, and that's what caused crumbling. That's not the interesting bit. The interesting bit here is that, again, in the abundance of these China-made cars on the Russian market right now, apparently waiting for all the parts, so there were multiple parts obviously involved in replacing and fulfilling the warranty and fixing everything. Not warranty, the insurance that he had, comprehensive insurance. He says that he could use the car during the repairs, which was what made the 4 months of the full repair acceptable for him. However, it did take those 4 months for every little bit that needed to be replaced, for every part to arrive in the country and be replaced. It was, in everyone's opinion, Ivan's opinion here as well, our host, he says, wow, 4 months, that's crazy. And then Alexei says, yeah, but I was driving it for like half of it. So it's strange to me. But again, luckily not our local Australian experience, or probably wherever you are, unless you're in Russia as well. So what else can we see here? Any other faults? Well, in summer, apparently in May, his aircon failed. Diagnostic was performed, all of that stuff. Something failed inside of the aircon. Again, they had to reorder replacement of the unit itself, and it took another roughly 4 months. So it's like they're both laughing about it and saying, oh, there's like a theme here with Omoda, with the parts. And spoiler alert, that is the major problem with that particular brand, with this particular car. Don't know why. May not be applicable to where you are or for me here in Australia, but it's not really good when, in order to replace something, it takes 4 months. It's crazy, right? He also mentioned that around 50,000 kilometers, the fake leather of the steering wheel wrapping started peeling, and it was like something was happening with it. So it had to be replaced, which took only 2 weeks. That's good news, not 4 months. But the whole steering wheel basically had to be replaced, which is unpleasant that it even had to. But 50,000 kilometers, I guess, rubbing with the hand, I guess it's maybe acceptable somewhere in some world. I don't know, you tell me. The quality of the glass and the windscreen, he said that during the ownership of Skoda, he had issues with the windscreen and he had to replace window panes 3 times. 3 times on his Skoda. By the time, presumably, he decided to change the car at 120, 130,000 kilometers, which is a very respectable distance. And here, so far, at least at 80, no problem. Don't know why, don't know what to attribute it to, or what kind of damage he refers to. He just simply mentions it quickly here. Are the quality of the interior finishes any issues? Well, he says again, he already mentioned the replacement of steering wheel. Seats have good feeling, they're dense, they didn't give way under the weight, his own weight as he sits there. It's not like the seat cushion is getting softer or something like that. That's a good thing. There are no tears, so the quality of the seat itself is rather good. So generally, Alexei also says, listen, you got to live a life, you got to try different brands. So he's happy actually that he swapped one car for another. So for him, it also, there is some, I guess, some philosophical and positive kind of mental health almost impacting element for him in this swap towards Omoda 5, and he seems to be overall quite content. I'm going to say not happy, I'm going to say content. Ivan notices that Alexei drives in sport mode, and he's like, oh, why are you in sport mode? What's that for? And he says, well, what mode am I supposed to be in? While the car only has two modes, sport and eco. It doesn't have normal mode, which is very, very weird. I don't know about our Australian models and stuff, can't remember in all honesty. But I would suspect it's similar because it's all electronics. It probably rolled out across the brand range. But yeah, he says sport mode is normal for us. The car drives in sport mode, but in winter, apparently, switching to eco mode actually helps because there is probably a bit less torque, less power to the wheels, transferred to the wheels, to the turning wheels, and he says there is a lot less skidding and a lot less wheel spinning happening. So sport is normal. So when to change and what to next time, he doesn't have a choice yet. He says he will at least run through the full warranty of 150,000 kilometers or 5 years, whichever comes first. So far so good, even with these minor problems. So he also says, listen, yes, there were some problems with this, but there are with a lot of cars, other cars that traveled similar distance and are in heavy kind of use. So he says some people are less lucky with cars, some people are more lucky with cars. I guess those people who are less lucky, they immediately create confirmation bias that Chinese cars are bad. That's what gives birth to those haters out there. Another theory, fairly workable theory, I'd say. It's probably likely. So yeah, once again, I think generally fairly positive experience. The car is still running quite well. He has no urgency of swapping it, of changing it. He doesn't hate anything, even though I think he's being fairly dispassionate, like I said, and highlighted to us what he thinks could be better and what he thinks is like really lacking, such as that telescopic steering wheel, as well as the ridiculously long time to get replacement parts if anything truly breaks, even if you are on warranty, even if you are on some kind of insurance. That's it, my friends. I hope you've enjoyed this. For those of you who are Chery owners and Chery fans, there you go. It's once again, you get what you pay for, but at the same time you could say, well, Range Rovers cost an arm and a leg, and yet they break more often than a Motor 5 breaks. So I guess we need to be very delicate here with those kind of blasé statements. I don't think they broadly apply anymore. And I think, again, hopefully some of you found these insights from a real owner in harsh winter conditions who is using car very heavily insightful and helpful. If you did, well, give me a quick like, you know what to do. And visit our sponsors as always, multitude of different links in the comments, not in the comments yet, but in the description of the video. Definitely check out the latest discounts. Some expire, some are still active, so the early bird usually gets the worm, so go check them out while they're still active. Happy New Year in case this is the first video you're watching from me in the new year, and I'll see you next time, and we'll talk about something else value cars related in Australia, Russia, wherever it is in the world. Bye for now.